Sam, what I usually start is with a elevator pitch of you. So basically, you telling me who you are and
Yeah.
what is it that you do,
Yeah.
and then we'll take it from there. I usually kind of like pick up things and start asking questions,
Sure.
curiosity stuff. Well, first off, thank you so much for doing this. Again, as I mentioned, I'm so disorganized that, and now that Lucy, by the way, how do you know Lucy?
I don't. I think she just reached out to me on
Oh, really? Okay.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Right. I see. Yeah, so like we paused the PR stuff over summer and over this period as I'm starting my own company, and I feel so lost already
Really.
because she was doing all of the reaching out,
Yeah.
reminders to people. Oh, by the way, here's the address. Here's how you get there. Are you coming? All of this stuff.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm a very disorganized person.
You and me both. I'm with you. I'm with you.
So thank you for keeping up your end of the bargain and actually showing up.
All good. All good. It's a pleasure.
So a bit about yourself.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Sam Thomas. I've been in Brighton now since 2010 when I started my entrepreneurial journey. With it, I was in a hair salon, so I was part of the Tony and Guy group.
Okay.
And I was never a hairdresser, purely a business venture for me. Um, Run that for 3 years, moved down into 2012, and then closed it into 2013. Didn't work out. It failed. I lost a bit of money. I had to sell a property in Essex, and but although I wasn't cutting hair at the time, I was. I guess I was. I was out networking, started to build my network. Then I've always been a people person. I get my energy from people. I love people, and I built a really strong network. So although I closed it in 2013, I knew that there was some opportunities here. I then took over a company called Fernballs, which is five-a-side football, golf, and pool. So networking through sport, which brought two of my passions together, really, sport and business. And I've still run that today. I've been growing that over the last sort of 12 years. We've got leagues all over the country, mainly in the southeast, but all over the country, London, Manchester. And then back in 2017, I took over a well-known publication based in Sussex called Sussex Business Times. Publishing has changed a lot over the years, so my business partner there approached me with my network that I'd grown over the years and was like, look, do you want to come on board? We can try and build something from off the back of the magazine, and that's been my main focus for the last few years, with a view to launch, which we did launch back in 2020, County Business Clubs, which is a Sussex-based membership organisation just to help companies share stories. And on the back of that, so we've got a business publication. I host a podcast now myself, which is probably, out of all the things I do, the thing I love the most. And I host a radio show, and then we host events, but it's all based around sharing stories and the power of storytelling in business. I guess that's a whistle-stop tour of where I am and what I'm doing.
A flash kind of like journey towards your into your business acumen in a sense. That's very interesting. You started with, and was that your first business, the hair
Salon. Yeah, it was. So it was. I got into as a youngster. I was like many. I grew up in Dagenham in Essex, and as a youngster, I was going to be a professional footballer, like many youngsters at that stage. And I was, I had a couple of trials and never quite made it, and then was just a bit lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had a couple of jobs in London, admin stuff, and just had no clear direction. My family had been in barbering. I used to get my hair cut in Tony and Guy in Lakeside in Essex, and I was like, always into fashion, loved that sort of area and that industry. And I ended up just chatting to the people who were cutting my hair and the managers of the salon. I ended up at 20, I think I was 24 at the time, 24, 25, and they said, I said, look, I'm looking to get into hairdressing. What does it look like? And then from that, I started. They offered me a job. They said, obviously, pay for an apprentice hairdresser at 25 was going to be really low. I was still playing semi-professional football at the time, so I was earning a bit of money on that. And they was like, look, come in and we can train you. I trained for about a year, 18 months, but I was front of house. So although I was training, I was front of house, and again, I loved people. It worked out really, really well. But at that time, a bit of a game changer for me. I was reading a lot of books, a lot of business books. I think I'd always had deep inside me a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. I watched a lot of Only Fools and Horses. That was I wanted to be this time next year. I'm going to be a millionaire. That was my thing, and I was like, I started looking into different businesses, what I could do, where my passion was, and I looked at doing some property. I looked at getting a coffee van. There was a few different angles I was looking at getting, and then the opportunity come up to take over my own salon here in Brighton, and the business owners that own the Lakeside salon was like, look, because the journey of trying to be a hairdresser, I realised we've all got our skill sets in life. Hairdressing wasn't one of mine.
Okay.
So I was like, look, I'm going to leave. But as I was going to leave and start my own business venture, they said to me, look, don't leave. We'll make you a manager, get more involved, and there'll be some opportunities further down the line. And it was exactly that. So I managed the salon, turned over about 1.5 million a year. Was one of the biggest toning guys. And then, like I said, I got to just before I was 30, I got to the point and the opportunity come up to take over my salon here. And it was an Essentials, it was a sister company of Tony and Guys. It didn't quite have the strength in brand, but it was an opportunity, and I just jumped at it. And it was tough. 2 years, I commuted from Essex every day, 7 days a week on a motorbike, which was a challenge in itself. But again, you learn so much from, like, my first business was just, I went in, I've reflect on it now, and I went in as a boss and not as a leader.
Right.
And I think I got the culture wrong. And that's where, that was mainly, not a complete failure, but it was just a real challenge.
Did you get any sort of, nowadays there's so many kind of like entrepreneurship program courses and so on. Did you get any of that when you get started, or was it strictly, hey, we want you to run this, let me show you the ropes, but that's about it?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it was literally like I'd managed the salon. I remember going up and then having a meeting with Tony Mascolo himself, who, was worth 350 million, I think, when he passed away in his 60s. An amazing entrepreneur, great guy. But he just bought into me as an individual. I think, I was one of the, out of 400 salons, I was one of the only franchisees that wasn't a hairdresser. And there's obviously a reason for that. There was challenges in that sense, but I did come at it from a business angle, and it was a great learning curve. But it wasn't necessarily the support from as a franchisor in that sense of how to run a business, and it was pretty much learning on the job for me, to be honest. And I think the people I had involved with me who managed this Lakeside salon, I don't think, looking back now again on reflection, weren't probably the best mentors how they run their business and stuff. So I don't think I learned that many core skills. Like I said, there was so much I learned, and one of the biggest things was when it failed and I had to walk away and lost the money. You learn so much from your failures, right?
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. I think we have a couple of similarities there, because my first business was in hair and cosmetics, and actually hair extensions.
Wow,
so
okay.
I was 17 when I started selling hair extensions. Not only selling, but also mounting, so that you had these keratin hair extensions. I don't know if back then, when you in that period, you must have
we
also
done hair extensions. Raccoon, I think we worked with at the time. Raccoon and the bonded hair extensions.
Yeah. So you had like the clip ones, you had the keratin one, the heated, the glue one. So I gotta. They were just coming to hype at that point when I was 17, 18. So I started doing that, I imported from China, found like natural hair extensions and so on, and imported a bunch and started putting hair extensions, learn how to do it, watch some tutorials and stuff. And like yourself, I realized I'm better at business than actually doing the thing, because I was very clumsy with my hands and such. So then I decided to kind of split, and actually me being the business, the brand, was using a lot of Photoshop, creating my own brand on it, having the logo sent to the factory, and getting everything imported. And I started finding individuals that were into cosmetics or hairdressers or whatnot, to help me actually do the putting the hair extensions
Yeah, sure,
in
sure.
hair. And then I started working with hair salons. I did have a hair salon at one point for like a year, my
Okay.
own hair saloon, and we were doing a bunch of stuff in there. But and this is the odd thing, right? So as well, it it kind of failed. It didn't go that well anymore, so I had to close it down in 2011,
Yeah.
and that's when I moved to UK.
Oh,
So
okay.
kind of like sounds
Similar.
like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
very
yeah. Very
similar
similar. Very
timeline.
similar. Very similar. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And Tony and Guy, so I know this brand because I used to work quite a lot
Yeah, sure.
with their products, and they had in Romania as well quite a few. So it's a franchise
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It's not like the parent company owns all of the.
No, no, yeah, it was a franchise. So it was probably, to be honest, Tony was quite, I guess, an innovator in that sense. He started like the first hairdressing franchise really,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, it was huge, and he had it nailed down to everything. So you got, as a franchise, you would buy into it, but you used to use their accountants, used to use their software, the salon software, the product. He had his own product range. You had to buy that. Shop fit out. He owned that company, so everything was tied up in what, and genius really from an.
Yeah, that was the first time. Like, and at that point, franchises were getting more and more popular in Europe as well. And I think that was the only one that Tony and Guy was the only brand that was doing this. And like, it was such a prestige thing to either work at a Tony and Guy saloon or even be a client of it.
100%. Yeah, I think that's what I bought into, because they were definitely market leaders. There was no one doing what they did. They took it to, but then, over the years it changed very much. So even independent salons raised their bar. They was, you'd go in and you get that quality coffee, cappuccino, latte, whatever you wanted. They'd have little snacks, and you'd have the whole experience was. And that's what it was about, an experience. And Tony and Guy, but they were the first people to really set that bar that high for salons, I think. And then you had lots of people, Rush have followed them, and other organisations have done franchising now. But they nailed it. And at the time, they were the market leader. You're right. You'd go up to. I worked at London Fashion Week a couple of weeks, which was amazing. Just to be around there, and what they were trying to do within the industry was incredible. So it was great to be part of it. One thing that I really enjoyed, actually, like, so although I didn't cut hair, I did learn to do the wet shaving, which barbering was becoming quite a big thing. So I had a vision for the salon when I first took it over, and we was right in the centre of Brighton, Prince Albert Street. We was over 3 floors, and my ambition was to have a salon downstairs, barbering on the middle floor, and then beauty on the top floor. Although things didn't work out, and like I said, all the ups and downs of those 3 years, I did about halfway through, about 18 months in, I knew it wasn't working. That's the honest truth. I knew it wasn't working, but it was my first business. I didn't want it to fail. So I took a bit of time out. I was like, what can I do to change this around? And I learned to do the shaving, went on a lot of different courses, and I ended up putting a course together for other Tony and Guy salons, because Tony and Guy didn't do it at the time. So I was training some of the other Tony and Guy salons would come to, then I opened an academy on the middle floor, and I introduced barbering, and that actually started to do quite well. And then because I was there, the salon, I wasn't on the salon, so that dropped a little bit. So it was always a challenge. But when I got to the end of that 3 years, when I finally closed it in 2013, I remember thinking to myself, I'd done everything I could. I'd give it my best, and it hadn't worked, but I'd give everything I could. And although it was still a tough day going in, I had 11 staff at the time, I think, going in saying, we're having to close. This is, this is the process, etc., etc. It was really tough, but I knew, hand on my heart, I'd given blood, sweat, and tears for 3 years, and I'd thrown everything at it, and it hadn't quite worked out. And I felt a little that eased it a little bit for me, I guess.
What was the hardest part of having to close that down? Was it thought or emotion or process, whatever comes to mind?
I think a bit of ego side of it. It was tough in the sense that I told all my friends back in Essex and all the other people around, I'm going to go and be this entrepreneur and I'm starting my business, and 3 years down the line having to close it was really tough. Going in and telling staff was a horrible situation. Like I say, I got emotional that day, I remember, but I knew, and I think they'd seen, as much as I didn't quite maybe get the culture right and stuff there, no one could say I hadn't worked hard. I was there 7 days a week. First one in the morning, last one to leave. Go out. I was doing everything. I'd be there scrubbing floors and all sorts. I was always very hands on as an owner. It was not the situation, I own this, you crack on and do it. I was there hands on. And I threw everything at it, and it just didn't work. So it was, but it was still a tough thing. And I took a couple of weeks afterwards. I remember thinking to myself, what's my next stage? And so many people go, "Oh, you're coming back to Essex now," and I'm like, no. And a lot of people like, our business thing didn't quite work out. So what are you going to do next? But for me, it was a moment for me. I remember sitting in a coffee shop the morning I had to go into the salon, and something come up on LinkedIn, and it was the 10 rules of success, and the top rule was accepting and understanding failure. And for me, I was like, okay. So, and all the books I read or listen to, and all all successful people have all had failures along the way, and it's what we learn from them. So I just took it out. I remember saying to my wife, even at the time, she was like, what's your plan? And she said, do we go back to Essex? She'd moved down as well, this was pre-kids. And I was like, trust me, I've made enough connections here and I've built enough of a community that there'll be opportunities here and I'll make something happen. And it did. Within a month of closing the salon, I was out. I negotiated a situation where I bought into the company of firm balls, and I took over that, and it was just a little part-time thing for this guy, like a bit of a side hustle, and I took it to a business that's still running today and making money. And
a month afterwards, that is, and I guess that's because you mentioned you're building a network and so on. That's the power of having a good network in even if it's local, especially if it's local, and if you want to do something. Just a month afterwards, you're already into something else. And you said something very interesting, which I think it's such a standardized thing, and I fucking hate it, which is, when you fail, everyone around you thinks, okay, you failed your business. So what are you going to get into? What kind of job are you going to get? So everyone is kind of like standard default is, well, your business failed. You're going back into employment. Yeah. Now that's, you're doing that, right? Something stable, something nice, and so on. No one thinks, and especially, and I think it's primarily from people that are not entrepreneurs at heart, because that's not the first thought that comes into my mind if I fail business. And I suppose that was the same with you. Did you had any moments where you're like, oh, maybe I should get a job and just quit this whole?
It's really funny. It's really interesting because my mum and dad, I was brought out lovely people. I've got an amazing relationship with them. They're incredible. Taught me an amazing work ethic, but we're not entrepreneurial. So they had. They both had jobs. My dad, same job for many years, and retired, and created a great life for me and my brother. But still, I don't think understood me in the entrepreneurial sense. Didn't. So when I closed it, I remember I had a little bit of a Dragon's Den moment. So I went to Tony Moscolo, and although I closed the salon, because I'd created something quite special with the shaving thing, I ended up going in and pitching a big idea to him, to the head of Label M, which was the product range, Tony himself, I had a panel of people and I went in and I'd created a whole movement into Tony and Guy getting into the men's grooming range. I created a product range on the back of it from the courses that I would be able to do. So I went in and look, they had all art directors and people in place.
Yeah.
In all honesty, didn't need me. Great idea, didn't need me. So nothing really materialised from that. But I had that in the background. I had the opportunity with Fernballs. There was a couple of other business opportunities that come my way, and then what come out of that meeting was the head of Label M, the product range, said, "We're not going to probably go with this, but you're just a natural salesman. Loved your presentation, loved what you did. Come in for an interview, we've got a potential opportunity." And I went up and I hadn't had an interview since I had the first thing at Tony and Guy, and I was just like, oh, should I go? And it was quite a decent package. And out of all these different opportunities, I went for that interview and I did sit down, and they was like, look, we can offer you the job, we want you to come on board. And I'm like, it was the least thing I wanted to do. But my mum and dad were like, all the other opportunities I was talking about, but they would ring me and go, oh, how did you get on with that interview? Have you got that? Because they thought that was my safe route, to go into it. And I was just like, and I said to my wife, and it was, like I said, it was a decent package, and we'd lost a bit of money, had to sell a property in Essex. She was like, oh, it's maybe a son. I was just like, I know I'm going to be miserable doing that. That's not for me. I don't want to do that. I know this is not as much money, and I know this opportunity to start another business and go into that, it's not the safest bet, but I can make it work. Trust me, I'm going to give it a go. And it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to get people around you who have supported you to go, trust me again, because actually you've just lost lots of money. We had to sell a house, and you're asking me to trust you on another thing. But and I've been lucky that she's supported me, and we've known each other since we was 11. Me and my wife went to school together, been together 28 years, and she still supports me today. I still look at her face when I go, I've got this idea. She just goes, God, not another idea. But I'm such a believer that we're here. Life is an opportunity, right? And we've got to. I don't want to get to the end of my days and look back and go, oh, what if I tried that?
Yeah.
What if? Just give it a go. I've got to give it a go.
And you know what? It's hard, especially when people rely on you, or there's other components of your life and I think that's one of the things that a lot of founders out there have to weigh in and take consideration of it. And it's so hard because the only biggest supporter of yourself and believer in yourself is yourself. Can be yourself, right? In a sense. Sometimes we kind of sabotage ourselves in that sense, but I think it's because I'll give you an example. So my family, my mom, my sister, they've always been, as me growing up and starting getting into business and so on, they've always been like, you are such a nerd, you're a genius, you're gonna make amazing things, look at you with your computers and all of this stuff, it seems like you're always on it, it's impossible you're not gonna make it. So they had this, and my entire family's always been, and I think that's kind of like one thing that I've had, which I had to tone down, is this grandeur thing, because I was told when I was very young that I'm special and that I'm gonna make a lot of things happen and so on. So my family had kind of like this blind trust in me in the early days, and then I went out in the world. And I failed my first business, the cosmetics business. And then I moved to UK. And I've tried and failed so many other businesses in the first 3 years of being in UK, right? Like just trying stuff and doing freelancing to be able to survive, and trying and failing. So much so that eventually my mom was like, maybe you can come to Italy and find a job here, might be better for you and such. So even my mom, that was my biggest supporter, started looking at it and saying, is this kind of like genius resilience, or is it mad approach
Yeah.
to things. So maybe, now they're like, oh, we always knew that you're gonna make it and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but you did had a moments of doubt and thinking that I'm not going to make it, and and that was again, I'm kind of sharing this example as someone that had my back and kind of like
Yeah.
always trusted that even when I failed the first time. But I can only imagine situations where your family is anyways unsure of you going into business and failing, and kind of like having those pressures of, well, that's not for you, go and get a job.
I think I paint them in. It's not. Look, I was, like I say, I was brought up with the biggest gift, which is unconditional love.
Yeah.
No matter what I tried, what I did, what I failed at, irrelevant. Unconditional love, and for me, that, and still today, they still support me. Although that, I think they just don't necessarily understand that path. It's a different generation, right? Their generation was you come out, you get a job, you work for 40 years, and you retire, and that's
Yeah.
that for many people of that generation. So it's difficult for them to maybe look at that in that sense, but still support me. We're still here for you no matter what. Bailed me out sometimes or whatever that looked like, but would still be there for me no matter what. Just trying to, I think, for their own thing, maybe that path is, because that's a safe path and that's something that they
Yeah.
understood. I just don't think they necessarily understood it, but no matter what, still had their backing, still give me enough self-belief from a young age because of the unconditional love and because of that still support. And I'm so close with them, like they're, I love them to bits, and I know that they love me unconditionally, and I know that has given me, by having that background and that backing, gives you the confidence to go, what's the worst that can happen? What's
Yeah.
the worst that can happen? I've sold a property to pay off some business failure. I've learnt from these things. I've been in some really dark holes and some dark spaces and gone, what am I doing? And like you said, that self-doubt, that self-talk that we give ourselves, you must have been there, I'm sure, where you go, am I doing the right thing? Do I just need to go? Do I just need to call this a day? But for me, what's the alternative is that, or there's this life where you can keep going and keep going. I'm going to give this a go. Like I said, I've got 9-year-old twins. For me, if there's one thing I want to teach them, just to follow your dreams and believe in yourself, follow your dreams and keep going, because who knows? That's the worst that could happen, but imagine what the best thing that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, even today, right? I was like, build a business, successfully sold it for a ton of money and so on, made it happen, right? So from ignition to exit. But yet I'm still getting into a new business and within a completely different field, and I'm, am I capable of doing this? Was that a one-time thing that happened and such? Yeah, and with what you said, I think that is extremely valid. We need to teach the youth, the younger generation, that they're valid, they're capable, they're apt to do so, because too much of extremes, in a sense, happens. Like, there's youth that comes out of families and environments where, never been ever told or shown that they're capable of doing things, and then you always have that self-doubt in yourself. There's also stories like mine, which was completely the opposite. Like me growing up, like my family was putting me on a pedestal like I was some sort of genius. And I went into the world thinking I'm a genius and failed hard, failed miserably. So much so that it switched to me being very, feeling like I'm an imposter, and that I'm out of place, and that I'm not capable of doing much. To this day, I still have that. Like, I made a video on my YouTube channel, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, talking about self doubt, and it's still a very strong feeling of it. And it's because of that, I went into the world thinking I'm so special, and then fell hard, and that switch and thought, like, no, I'm not, I'm a loser. So I think there's a balance to have where, with our youth, with the next generation of entrepreneurs and founders, we need to give them the courage and the confidence of stepping into doing their own thing, and seeing that they're capable, while also kind of like showing the challenges. That's why I'm doing Misfit Founders, right? Like that, I'm talking about the challenges and our fuck ups, so that you are aware of those, so that you don't, go through a couple of courses. Let's say everyone applauds you because you won first prize in those business courses, and you go into the world thinking that you're the best founder and entrepreneur, and right.
The world has a strange way of bringing you down to earth, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think that's it. I agree with you. I think there's a couple of things for me. The next generation, I think, as important as that is the fact that trying to find what they love doing, as opposed to anything else. Just what lights you up, what excites you. Because so many people, I think, will be led into an entrepreneurial life because they see a lot on social media and Instagram, and it's amazing life, and I'm gonna be a multimillionaire, and again, that's why these conversations are so great, because you can talk about the challenges and the fucking hard times that you're gonna go through to get to that stage, and so much of what I talk about on mine is around that measurement of success. What does that mean? What does success mean to people? It'd be interesting because obviously, from your point of view, they say made it, but when you've got to a position of financial security or financial wealth, because so much in society is measured, the metric in which we measure, especially in business, the metric we measure success is based on financial status.
Yeah, it is.
Do you agree?
It is in society. Yes.
Society. That's how we measure someone. So you would be seen as a successful entrepreneur because you've built a business, exited, got a ton of money. What a success that person is. And I completely agree. And it's really successful, and that should be something that's an achievement that should be. But I don't feel that's the only metric. My tagline of my podcast is called "Helping the World to See Success Differently," because I think within the business community, people would look at me as, and I've been told by many people, really successful, you've done well. I'll openly share on here. Financially, no. I've run some good businesses that are sustainable and making some money. Never reached a financial position. Never exited a business and sold for lots of money. They do okay, the businesses, financially, and like I say, I'm proud of what I'm doing with them, but not got to that stage. I'm 45 now. When I was 40, I went into a dark place. It hit me hard because my entrepreneurial journey was going to be, I'm going to be a millionaire. Of course, I'm going to build this business. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make millions. And I didn't achieve that. And I felt like a complete failure at that point, because in my head, I was like, the measure of my success, if people wouldn't see me as successful because I haven't made that money. I'm not where I wanted to be. I'm not the millionaire I promised I would be. What got me out of that dark space and that hole was the fact that I looked around. I was surrounded by love, and I was surrounded by within the business community. I meet people, and I've got some amazing friends here. Amazing friends. I've got people I've grown up with from school who were still my best mates, who would walk over hot coals for me, and I'd do the same for them. And my mum and dad, like I said, love me unconditionally. I love them. Beautiful wife, 2 beautiful kids. My brother's my best mate, lives in Australia, and we're still so close. If I died tomorrow, but my measure of success, the metric in which my success was based on the relationships I'd had and the impact I'd had on them people, I think I'm doing all right. And that changed the narrative for me, and I've been on a little bit of listen, I'm still ambitious, and I'll still push, and I'll still create these things, and if money's a byproduct of that, then fantastic. But actually, I'm a lot more at peace with myself knowing, and in a better place knowing that actually I feel that I am successful in that measurement. Does that make sense?
How how much that makes sense, because I've been through the same dark place, but way earlier, and that's what social media nowadays, and I would say just seeing what success is supposed to look like, right? And you not achieving it, and going to that dark place thinking that you're a complete failure. Um, I got to that place when I think I was 28. And no, was I 28? Back in 2014, 15. I think I was a bit younger than 28. Anyways, um, after failing my cosmetics business in Romania, and then spending 3 years trying to build, I had the same thing. I was like, I'm gonna be a millionaire, and that stems from my family, my parents, and so on, telling me the things that they were telling me about who I am, and also seeing social media and all of the successful people. And I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be a millionaire. I'm gonna have a ton of money. That's my end game, right? And failing so much and seeing that doesn't happen took me to a dark place as well. And the problem with me was that I think I have ADD that also makes me kind of like, I wouldn't say forget, but not prioritize certain things. Like, for example, my family. I was in UK for several years, haven't seen my family in years, and the connection to my family was getting thinner, right? And I was alone. I didn't have anyone around. I didn't have a partner at that point or anything like that. So me being in that dark place of I'm a failure, I shouldn't exist, I shouldn't be here. What am I doing, right? I didn't have that leverage of, look at all the people around me that love me, and that's what it is. So, and I haven't really talked about this that much, but there was a pivotal moment back then in 2014, end of 2014, where I actually done this, went to this thing that I think is called Landmark Forum. It was this 3 days event that kind of like dives into some of your inner workings and figuring out what is it that you're challenged with, and coming to a realization in a sense. And that completely changed me. And that was a kind of like the moment where I decide that I've realized their success doesn't mean what I think success means, and that I'm loved and that I have people around. And right after that event, I kind of like reached out to my mom, to my sister. I said, "Oh, hey, I'm coming to see you this Christmas. I need to be around you. I know that, you guys love me," and so on. So, but it was a very dark moment, because my mantra up until that moment was succeed or die. I was very unhealthy. I was weighing 50 kgs at one point. I was kind of like killing myself with kind of like caffeine pills and staying awake 40 hours to code stuff, to do things. And I was like, I was on this journey of I either make it or I die. I'm in the ground. And yeah, and that moment helped me change and see success differently. And I do since then. And, me having I was already considering myself a successful person, because I've achieved the stuff that I wanted. I've achieved peace. I've achieved a level of comfort that I needed in my life. Even when I was working, because I worked for 5 years in London, I was considering myself, this was happening after my revelation. I was considering myself as a successful person. I have everything that I need. Look, I'm living in Angel. It's a beautiful area. I have a nice big room that I was sharing. I have amazing colleagues at work. I'm doing amazing work and so on. So I started kind of appreciating the things that I had, and I started looking at the values that I wanted. Is it money, or is it something else? Or is it not having to kind of like be on the streets or whatnot? I've had a couple of moments in Romania where I was sleeping rough and such. So, and I think I completely agree. And I think there's a very big similarity between what we're doing with our podcast. On one side, for me, is on social media and general media, you see these success stories, and you think that, you need to put A, B together and you'll be successful, when the reality is completely different. So I want to convey that. And on your podcast, you're showing that success doesn't mean money. For some it will, but success is what you make of it, and you need to find your success, what makes you happy, right? What gives you that level of, yes, I made it. Because it shouldn't be money, but unfortunately in today's society it is. So with podcasts like yours, we can spread more the understanding that that's a false narrative.
I think so. I think that I'm not saying that money is not important. We need money to survive. I think, I think I've maybe not had a great relationship with money from an upbringing, or I come from a very working class background. I don't think I necessarily had a great relationship with money. I don't think it should be the only metric. We need it to survive. And actually, as business owners, and being in those dark places where we haven't got any money, that's what keeps us up at night, right? That's it.
My favorite exercise is running out of cash. There you go. Very contextual here.
I like that. But that's exactly, isn't it? Like, so I'm a very happy-go-lucky person. I've generally got people, if you ask in the community, I've got a smile on my face. I'm an eternal optimist. Believe that everything's going to be all right, always. But what people don't necessarily see is them nights when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're waiting for that invoice to come in because you've got to pay that one. And how am I going to pay the staff this week? How am I going to do? And they're tough times. And that does get you down. And that's where money does become an issue, because the thing that keeps me up at night is not what am I going to do next, or what's the next opportunity. I've got loads of ideas. I'm doing loads of things. Where my podcast is called Different Hats, because I wear so many, run different businesses, right? So I've got all these things. The thing that keeps me up at night is maybe that lack of it. So there is a balance there to be had. I don't think, I don't want to sound like we don't need money and we can all just, of course we need it, and it is. But I don't think that actually it's not my driver anymore. It's not this time next year I'm going to be a millionaire, the Del Boy philosophy, because actually, and I'd be interested to, I don't want to turn the table, but I'd be interested to ask you, like, because I've had some multi-millionaires on my podcast, and there's not one of them, I don't think, that has gone, yeah, I've got to that point and that was my euphoria moment and I made all this money and I was like, yes. Like Kevin Byrne, for example, who sold Checker Trade for 90 million, sat there in front of me and he looked at me and he was talking about Checker Trade with so much passion, so much love and drive, and you could tell him excited about it. And then I spoke to him about the day he sold it, and he was like, yeah, that money went into the account. I went home, had dinner, went to bed. And he said, as much as that money's changed my life, and it has, he said, it's changed my life, I wish I still had what I had. Because he said, that was my purpose. And that's what we need. In life, we need a purpose. And money, as much as it can get us nice stuff, and it can create comfort and some amazing experiences for you and your family and everything around that, you still need that purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, like, what's fascinating, like, I'm only assuming, but obviously not knowing you that well, but getting to the financial position that you did, one of the reasons you're doing this, because we need a purpose. You can't just go, I've made, like you said, that made it moment what does that mean? I made it. What do we stop then?
Mm.
What like if I did sell a business next year and I was a multi-millionaire and I said, what do I do? Do I stop? Of
Yeah.
course not. Life's for living and life's an opportunity. And will you ever stop? Will your brain ever go, oh, what about this idea? Oh, I want to do this. Of course it's not, because that's the way you're built, right?
I think it depends on who you're talking to, because I've seen people, had people on the podcast and so on that were like, I made my exit and now I'm retiring from doing stuff. I'll just be at home, you know, doing some gardening and this and that, and I'm happy with that. But that's very rare. I think a lot of founders need that constant pursuit of meaning and direction and things like that. Well, first of all, I wanted to also mention, yes, I completely agree. I can't be a hypocrite here and say money doesn't matter when, I've had a successful exit and so on. I'm the last person to talk about and say that. Money does matter. But one thing that I would say is I was happy and fulfilled. As much as I'm happy and fulfilled now, I was happy and fulfilled while I was building my Jigsaw business, while I was working for 5 years before Jigsaw as well, right? Yes, in the last year, because I've talked about this on the podcast prior, in the last year or so of Jigsaw, it was quite stressful and intense. And it was kind of like a relief to get to the point that we were aiming, because we were aiming for an exit. It was a big relief, right, in a sense. And I had that, okay, we made it, we achieved our goal. But it didn't change, it changed mine and Nikki's level of comfort, but not our level of happiness and fulfillment, in a sense, right? And it does, it does bring some benefits having that badge, right? I can't say things are a lot easier for me now than they were before, right? I can enter any room and have a conversation and say I'm an exited founder and investor, and people pay attention, right? In a way, it's sad because it still revolves around the money value and worth. You can't say, I mean, I enter a room and say I build an application that, helped 10,000 companies, this, that, right? Even saying that, people still associate money. Oh, well, if you have 10,000, he's probably making a lot of money. Oh, well done. If I don't mention the 10,000 and I say, I have a company that helps solve this critical problem in, let's say, project management or tracking or so on, like I had, I feel like, oh, cool. And some people that are probably in project management will be like, nice, I might use that. They don't really super validate you. You're a guy that has been able to solve that. Unless you're talking about, I don't know, going to the moon or whatever, sure. AI that done X, Y, Z and so on. And people are like, oh, that's. Sadly, we still live in that society where 100%. People put dollar signs to your value, right? So I can't be a hypocrite here. Yes, me having an exit and becoming an investor and so on helps open doors, pretty much. And I think you mentioned about your guest that, had 90 million in the bank account and was like, okay, went to bed and nothing, no emotion or not much emotion. For me, it was actually different. And the reason why is because I was carrying a lot of baggage from my childhood, from my parents, my family told me as growing up, oh, you can do it, you're amazing, and so on, right? So I grew up with this, as I mentioned, this kind of like attitude that I'm invincible. And then my parents divorced when I was a teenager, and we stayed with our mom, and our dad switched to saying, you're all losers and you're not going to achieve anything in life and so on. So that even more gave me the attitude. and been through a lot of hard moments in life, and kind of like dropping and figuring out thinking I'm a loser and so on eventually. So when that happened, I think I've had a bunch of flashbacks of my entire history, and it was an emotional moment to me. It was like, it didn't meant much to me then in the moment. It wasn't like my end game and so on. But retrospectively, looking at all of those moments, it was kind of like this, I would say, a resolution to my past in a sense. I don't know if it makes sense, right?
It really does, yeah. I guess maybe for you, like a sense of relief almost that you've got to the you that was your drive and you wanted to get to that point, and that's what would then validate, because we all crave, whatever way you look at it, social media is more guilty for this, I guess, more than ever, but we crave external validation. Why do we post some stuff up there and we measure what that, I'm going to put a message out there and I'm going to measure what that message is like by how many people like or share or comment, and that's going to be whether that's valid or that's a good piece of content that I've put out there, not the fact that these are my values, this is what I believe in, and I'm going to put that out there, and because that's what I believe, not because I want to get at X amount of likes. And the same, I guess, with that process, it's getting to a point of craving, I guess, a part of external validation from family members, especially if you've been told that for so long that you are going to. I have, so there's almost a sense of relief maybe for you. Then.
But it was also odd because, as I mentioned, at that point I'm happy and fulfilled. I've left in end of 2014, beginning of 2015. I left that whole chase and thinking of, I need to make it, and dollar signs means me making it. I left all of that behind, and I built a foundation, a new foundation, and a life on top of that of finding success in in the right values that I had, and trying to figure out, okay, what are my values and so on. So it wasn't like I was craving for this so much and then it happened and so on. My identity was completely different at that point, right? I think there was that one moment in time when that happened and the money came to my account, where I had all of the flashbacks of my youth, of my parents telling me this, and my dad being nasty, my mom telling me to go to Italy and so on. That kind of like gave me that rush of emotion, right, on the spot. It didn't really last. It wasn't like, oh yeah, moved on and continued, and it's still have the same. Like, I don't feel different. I feel like I'm the same wild person that's chasing to do more stuff because I have an itch. And and I suppose that's one of the things that you were talking about as well, is like, you have this passion and this craving to produce value, and if money comes along the way, that's perfectly fine. And I think I'm in the same stage right now. Although you get odd looks here and there, which is because people are like, oh, you've done this, what's your next big move? I don't have any next big move. I have a podcast. I'm starting what's considered a lower tier business in the film production scene versus crazy SaaS B2B 10x multipliers type of business. I'm starting a business in a different and I get reaction, like you get this shows you our society, right? Like when people say, oh, I saw your exit, that's amazing, what are you doing now? And you say, well, I'm focusing on my passion, being creative, and I'm doing some video and film. People are like, oh, that reaction of,
you having a breakdown? What's going on?
Yeah, not like the, oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh, really?
You're able to do this. It's people are like, oh, that's cute, kind of.
But again, it's back to the thing of, back to what I was saying about the next generation and my kids. Just find stuff that lights us up. Just find something that you're passionate about, that you're going to get out about, and telling them that, whether, I've even said, if they wanted to go and sweep the roads for a living, if that's what they wanted to do, but they loved it because they wanted the world to be clean, and I want to make a cleaner world, and me sweeping them roads is going to be. If you love that and you're passionate about it every day, then you go do that, and you go and follow that dream if that's your dream and that's what you want to do.
But do you reckon that you being you, right? As in, you're a serial entrepreneur, been having businesses for, before they were even born, having your podcast, being kind of like a public figure as well. Do you think that any of that kind of influences what they want to do and so on? Do you get that feeling that they're interested in this business and the stuff that you do, or they're completely opposite to that?
I don't know. You know what? It's really I really don't know, because my wife, me and my wife are complete opposite ends of the scale. Right? So she's a criminal solicitor. Wanted to be a solicitor since she was 11. She went to university. She was one of the only people out of our school. Two people. She was the only one out of our school that went to university, qualified, and she's very, very academic. So that's her route, and she's gone and done that. She's a managing partner of a law firm, and she's done really well. Ticks a lot of boxes for her. Next stage is a judge. So we're both. I think both of us with our kids have gone. We're parents to you, and we love you, and we want to be around for you, but we're both still following our dreams as well. And she's following her, she's going to be a judge, and I think they see that. So we've got the twins, and they're Lucy and Sienna. Sienna's very academic like Kelly. Lucy's more creative like me, so from school wise they're like polar opposites almost. But I hope that the main thing I teach them, I talk about business all the time. They see me get up and I'm going, what are you doing today? That I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to host an event. I'm at the Amex today because I'm doing a big tournament or whatever. So they see me doing all these things, and I like when I'm talking about, I'm going, oh, who's on your podcast today, Daddy? And then they can tell that I'm excited about it, and I'll talk to them about it. So I'm hoping that what it is, that they buy into that. I'd love them to get to a stage when they're 18, they finish in school, whether it comes to the point of university, that they go to me, Dad, I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to go and travel the world. I'm going to go and find out what my purpose is or my passion, or I'm going to go and do them things. I've got this idea for a business, I'm going to start that. I hope that that's their path, that they just find it what they're passionate about. Not to the stage where they go, where I think my generation was, well, you go there, you go to university, you get a job, and don't go to university. I don't want to get onto the whole education thing. I think the education system is completely broken, in my opinion. I think we still teach in a certain way. I think we should be encouraging entrepreneurship. We should be encouraging emotional intelligence and measuring emotional intelligence as much as we do academic intelligence. And I think that's not done, and that's not taught in schools. And I think, in answer to your question, a long way and a half, I think they will both go quite different ways.
Of course they will.
But what that will be, I honestly at this stage, I don't know. Like I say, I think more than the business side. I mean, Lucy has said to me a few times, I'm not going to ever work for someone. I'll have my own business. And if that's the case, then...
Well, I think it's pretty predictable what's going to happen just by listening to you talk about how you are at home and with your partner and with them. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Yes, they're not going to go in the same direction, mainly because they see your example with your partner that are in completely different passions and so on. So I think they've understood very early on that that's okay. They don't need to stick together in a sense and do stuff together. And I think the second thing is, I think they will get passionate about their own things, and yes, they would go their own ways. And here's why I say that, because your culture at home and what you teach them and what you show them of your entrepreneur life and so on, and your partner of their own professional journey is polar opposite to, for example, a friend of mine, where comes from a wealthy family. His parents are like they have a business. It's like a family run business, and they're very polar opposite to how you described your culture at home. As in, they don't talk about business that much. The kids have grown up thinking that this is, kind of like a boring thing that needs to happen, right? So when he grew up, nothing, like absolutely no drive or desire to go out in the world and take the world on his own and figure out things and be creative and do stuff like proactiveness. No, he stuck around the household and kind of like tried to figure out, maybe see if he hated the business, but like I don't know what else to do, just maybe I can take over the business one day and so on. So, but that kind of conveys well, he grew up in a culture where, it wasn't prolific or kind of like romanticized the idea of being creative and pursuing your own passion. Like his parents weren't talking passionately at the dinner table of, oh yeah, today I've done this and that, and then tomorrow I'm having this cool thing. I'm so excited because it gives me this opportunity. So no, those discussions never happen. So he grew up not having access to any of that. So of course he didn't organically have that drive to go out in the world. But that sounds like the opposite of what you're doing.
I hope so. I think even to the point where we go, I try to come away from even the conversation around that he's going to work to earn money to give us this life. I try and go away from that. I'm going to work because that's what I love doing.
Yeah.
And actually from that we get money to pay for the house and stuff. But as a byproduct, the things I love doing, if I really want to try, and look, I don't get it right all the time, but I'm really trying to go along that path, that just that passion, find out, do something that you love, and then from that, the rest will take care of itself. It will be a byproduct because you're doing it and it lights you up, it gives you a purpose and fulfills you. And that's, like you said, for me, we mentioned about success earlier. Success is different for every person, right?
Yeah.
Everyone defines success in their own way, and that's what I've learned from 120 episodes of the podcast. But I do think that what we're all trying to get to, what we're all seeking in life, is happiness and fulfillment. Money does sometimes, but not always, will bring you that happiness and fulfillment. It's just living a life aligned with what your values are.
Yeah.
I think as individuals, if we can get to that point, I think that's okay.
Yeah. I think I'm in the perfect situation here, right? And I've been preaching this before getting to financial safety and all of this stuff. I've been telling people this: get to find your happiness and what fulfills you before you reach financial gain, right? Because then it's different, right? If you first make money and then try to figure out what makes you happy and what gives you fulfillment, I feel that that's a lot more of a rocky road to go down. If you're already happy and fulfilled and you're like, I know what I love being creative. I love putting things out in the world. I love the art of creation, but also the output. Like, and I've had I'll share you that episode. Like, I had a mini documentary made from Paddle, talking about this, and I say in there, like, if I feel like I'm not providing value and I'm standing still, I feel like I'm lost somehow, right? So it's that constant pursuit of doing things, being creative, and so on. So I found that way before, even thinking of selling the business and so on. So like it's different for me. Like I invest money in this kind of stuff, right? I don't go out and try to buy yachts and see if that makes me happy and such. Yeah. So I think it's.
I'll give you a really good example. I interviewed a guy called Chris Goodman, who is the co-founder of Focus Group, the telecoms company
Mm.
here in Sussex. So I interviewed him probably about 18 months ago. They've just actually had a merger that's taken them to £1 billion company, huge organisation. But prior to that, they were turning over 140 million.
Mm.
He was already a multi-millionaire. They sold 25% of it in March 2020. Said all of my financial, I was already a millionaire, but all of my financial dreams for my family, my next generations and generations after that, no problem. We released his episode on World Mental Health Day because what we talked about was depression and anxiety and the problems he suffered after. He said, I'd spent 20 years of my life climbing this ladder, realising that my ladder was against the wrong wall.
Mm.
Because, again, back to your point of not really knowing what fulfilled him or what made him happy, thinking that was it. And he got there and was like, I fucked up.
Yeah.
This is not the ladder I should have been climbing. You know, kids and family and stuff. He now runs a foundation, Focus Foundation, where he gives back to support charities, and he seems in a much better place because he's had to find that afterwards. And I think your point's fantastic, that you go, actually find those things first. Hopefully, if you do get to that stage and that financial stuff comes in, fantastic. But you're not going to change as an individual because you know that's just going to enhance, maybe enable you to buy some nice things and whatever. But it's not going to change you as an individual. You're still doing the things that light you up.
And the mental health thing is quite important as well, because the kind of like getting to a mature enough place to know what makes you happy and fulfilled. I think this is going to be the topic of this this conversation, because we said happy and fulfilled so many times.
Yeah.
Getting to that stage can help a lot with the feelings of self-doubt, to potentially the tendencies of depression and so on. Like, I've had moments, and I still have moments where, you know, I doubt myself massively, or that I'm, you know, have days where I'm not happy, like I feel sad and so on, right? These happen. Like, we're human beings, and I think most of us have emotional challenges, as well as kind of like mindset and mental things that we need to deal with. But having direction and purpose, happiness and fulfillment helps with that.
100%.
It's, like, I have days where I'm not happy. Like, I might have a day where I'm like, oh, like I'm so stressed today, and I feel like I'm not worded. What am I even doing? But because I direct my attention to all of the things that excite me and so on, that doesn't last. It's periodic. It's something short, right? And again, going to what we were saying here, it's the same thing, like, right? So if you don't have your direction set and your values set, and you don't know what makes you truly deeply happy, when you get those millions, well, you know, they say, oh, this is just short-term happiness. Well, the reason why it's short-term happiness is because you don't have your kind of like your core established. So these fleeting moments of buying a McLaren, hey, I drive it for an hour, oh, and I'm still depressed, and I'm still sad, and I'm still like don't know what's going on inside of me. That's going to continue to happen. So I think that's more important for us as a civilization, as humans, to really truly find what makes us happy.
I completely agree. I guess a couple of things I take on from what you said there. I think there's them points in life, and actually, when you do feel sad, it's okay. We're gonna go through times. Like I said, I'm an optimist, right? You'll see people, if you go into the business community, oh, do you know Sam? Yeah, a smile on his face, and I'm that optimist. Of course I have. Like, I'm a human being. Of course I have shit days.
Yeah.
I get upset. I'm very emotional. I'll cry. I can be vulnerable, and I'll have shit times and feel really sad and down. And I've been through them only recently, a few months back, and you're in a hole and you're like, ah. But it's recognising a couple of things, recognising that this too shall pass. So wherever you are at that time, this will pass. And the same when things are good, like things are great at the moment. I'm touch wood, things are going in the right direction. I'm enjoying, I'm loving what I'm doing. Things are okay. Just got myself a little beach hut. I sit there,
Nice.
you talk about my happy place, I sit there, I swim in the sea, I sit there with my coffee, and I've had a couple of moments recently where you go,
You should do a beach hut podcast.
beach hut, but tell you what, I'm on it. But it's them feeling, but even recognising actually this will pass as well. The good times will pass, and that is that's life. That's the roller coaster of life that we will go up and down. But accepting where you are right now, okay, but that doesn't define me where I am right now. It's just going to be, I'm in a tough time and this will pass. I'm in a really great time, this will pass. And just recognising, but actually just bringing it down to the point of being in the moment as much as you possibly can. Appreciating where you are with gratitude where you are right now. Because we can't change what's gone on in the past. No, none of us know what tomorrow holds, right? But right now. And I don't know how you feel, but for me, doing a podcast is the thing that makes me be in the moment as much as possible. Because we're sitting here having this conversation, right? You're listening to what I'm saying, I'm listening to what you're saying, so we're going to try and respond depending on what each other have said, as opposed to you're not sitting there with a list of questions that you're going to ask me, and then we spoke offline before you come on. I just want to have a conversation with you and find out a bit about you. Similar to me, I have a conversation. It's not an interview, it's a conversation. And you have to have a real deep conversation, you have to be in that moment.
Yeah.
I think that's why I feel so fulfilled and happy doing a podcast, because it allows me to do that. I'm working on, outside of the podcast, I'm working on being more present in everything I do. When I'm with the kids and I'm not looking at the phone and I'm with them and I'm with them, trying to do that. I'm not always great at it, but we try. When I'm with my wife, can I not see the top of your head and your baseball cap? Because I want to have a conversation. We try and be more present. We try and get to them stage, and I think if we can achieve that, there's some gold there and some happiness.
Super wise words. I'm gonna make it a bit more lighthearted and ask you a very stupid question about you've done over 100 episodes of your podcast now. Do you feel that you started taking some of your podcast hosting tendencies in the real world?
That's a brilliant question.
I'll tell you mine afterwards.
Sometimes I find it really. I think as a podcast host, you're naturally curious. Right? We mentioned it. You're naturally curious. So I'll still find I'll go to a networking event and I'm having a conversation. And I'll start asking questions. Based like I would anything. And then all of a sudden I'll be sitting around a table at a networking event, and it may be I'll drop out and all of a sudden how do they define success, and we'll get onto that and it's that. So I have found that I can maybe use some of the hosting stuff when I'm out and about.
Yeah, so I found that I'm doing the exact same thing at events. It helps because it can generate a conversation and ask questions and stuff. But two things. One, all my friends know it, right? Because you get into asking questions in a certain way and say, hold on a second, are you podcasting me right now? And I'm like, oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
The other odd thing, which I don't know if you have, but I definitely do, is when I'm talking to people nowadays and I'm having a deeper conversation, I look them in the eyes. I look at them quite straight, and that can come across as staring, right? I had a couple of people saying like, wait, they were talking, right? Now just look at them, which I do on the podcast, right? I'm not like this, right? And I was looking at them because I was focused on what they were saying, and they're like, why are you staring at me? I'm like, I'm not staring. I'm just like looking at you because I'm like absorbing what you're saying. I'm deep into what you're saying. So yeah, that's maybe the negative downside of it. I don't know.
But I think what the art that's been lost, I think, over the years is the true art of listening. This is what this enables us to do as hosts.
Yeah.
Got to really listen, right? How many times have you been to an event or you're in a conversation and we're waiting for that person to finish so we can say what we want to say,
Oh yeah.
as opposed to truly listening to what they're saying without thinking, I'm going to respond to this with what my beliefs are. You're going to really listen. So like the book I'm putting together at the moment from the podcast is called Lessons from Listening, because I've learned, we both mentioned how much we've learned from having these conversations, right? But I really think that only happens. This has enabled me to become a much better listener. I'm not just waiting for that person to finish. I'm listening to what they're saying because I'm intrigued. And like you said, but you have that, and I'm the same as you. I will look at that person in the eyes and I feel like there's a connection there that you could, because you want to really listen to what they're saying, as opposed to just when you're doing the other thing, which the majority of society will do, because that's how we are. I've got something important to say, so okay, I'm listening to you, yeah. But okay, right, thanks. You finished now? Right, I'm going to speak to you now. No, really listen.
That's so annoying.
Yeah.
So annoying. The other bit that happens is either that, which is quite common, of people being like, okay, finish, right? The other bit is people just like not looking at you at all when you speak, right? Which again can make you feel like they actually don't even care about what you're saying. So just like,
Yeah. Looking over your shoulder, who could I speak to next?
yeah, exactly. So, and that taught me a lot. I watch all of my, I don't know if you watch your podcast back and so on. I watch all my podcasts back, and I feel that I'm learning so much about myself as well. And like I'm teaching myself by watching those podcasts back. Each episode is how to get better at listening, at understanding, at not talking over people, at not saying way too many times, because that's again like we can come across as various ways depending on how you interpret it. Yeah, but I was curious what the side effects of doing 100 episodes are.
It becomes, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, I almost feel like I'm in therapy. It's like very cathartic for me. Because like I said, most of the stuff I talk about, similar to you, things I'm curious about, and running a business and how people have got to where they are and and I find that fascinating. So I'll talk about work-life balance and how do you achieve that with your kids, what does that look like, and trying to get into people's side, but mainly all the problems that or the issues that I have, I can find out from these people if there's similarities there and how they get over them things. And I think it does become a really, there you go, bang, you listen over, and it becomes very cathartic. It's an amazing thing. I think I love it.
And what's, I'm not gonna ask this because people ask me this, and I actually get a bit annoyed when people ask me this, which was about the podcast. What's the end goal? Where you're heading with the podcast? Which for me personally, that feels like such a non-question. Yeah. But what would you like the next bit for you to be, in terms of what would give you that sense of fulfillment in the next, I'm not going to say years but what's the next thing what are you chasing right now, in a sense, that could give you that extra dopamine of fulfillment? Let's call it like that.
Really good question. I think I'm at a place at the moment. I'm trying to, the podcast is called Different Hats because of the amount of different businesses. I'm trying to get to a place where potentially I can offset some things, where I can really focus on what I'm trying to do. And I think the business community that I'm building, the business club, the podcast being a big part of that, sharing stories and the true connection that we get from sharing stories is something that I'm really passionate about, and I want to really hone in on that and focus. I think there's lots of metrics, especially within the podcast, that you go, again, we're back to that external validation and what that looks like. I'd love to get 10,000 subscribers and, do this, etc., and loads of followers and all of them things. That would be a nice byproduct of what I'm trying to do, I guess. But ultimately, for me, I've always said it. I think if people are still willing to come on and have a chat with me, great. If people still listen and I can get one comment on a podcast episode or one LinkedIn message saying I listened to this and it really helped me, by one person, that's enough for another 6 months, a year for me to go and do it, keep going, right? Just because I feel that if we can, there's so many out there at the moment, but I still think that we all have our own style and we all have our own way of having a conversation. I think for me, if I can just keep building this community that I'm trying to, and help to change that narrative a little bit around what success really means and how we define it and measure it. I guess if I can keep on that path, I think that I'll be happy and fulfilled with that.
And it's not, this is one of the things that I've kind of set for myself as well. And you're right, because you're talking about the chasing numbers and so on. It can be so, you can get hooked into it.
Of course.
And if you chase numbers all the time and so on, you can also get depressed because you're like, oh, wait, I'm not growing. It's not working. I failed, right? So, but I think it sounds like you're at a place where you understand your priorities, which is, you love to have conversations. You're a chatty person. You're in your environment when you're having these conversations with individuals. So, it doesn't require a lot of energy. At least for me, it doesn't require.
Not at all, no.
Like you came in, I was like, okay, let me turn the cameras on. Bam, let's go, right?
Exactly that.
So it's not like something that you put a ton of effort into generating, and then, from what I understand, which seems to be kind of my same ethos in a sense, is if you can get one person per week or whatnot to come and say, oh man, I took so much value out of that, you're happy. I'm the same. I'm in the same boat. Yes, sure, I would love for the podcast to reach more people because it means we're helping more people with some of this information and so on. But at the end of the day, it's people keep on asking me this question, and I know I'm gonna offend a couple of people by saying that they're annoying by asking this question because they're probably watching this podcast. People keep on asking me this question. Oh, so what are you gonna do with the podcast? Is this your kind of like trying to figure out if this is my business, right? This is what I'm doing as a business.
Have you been asked this? How do you monetize it then?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. I always say I don't. Do you charge your guests to come on? No. I'm doing it similar to you, right? We're doing it because we believe that there's a message out there. These conversations, hopefully, are gonna help people, and we want to put value into the world, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, if one day it's going to get to a point where, okay, well, we have opportunities for sponsors and so on, well, all of that will go into getting better edits and reaching more people and so on. But this is not a business. This is like something that I do as a kind of like give back to the founder community, So no, that's really good and interesting to hear from someone else, because every single time I ask, like I didn't ask it on the podcast that much, but I had podcast hosts, and when I asked the question, where are you heading, it was like, tell me numbers and a bunch of KPIs and so on. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's your way of doing it. But, I also think that we live now in a world where you start a business, a product, a service, this, that, and one of the go-to mediums for organic is podcasting. So there's so many companies and founders out there that start podcasts because they want to promote their product per se. And I don't know if you had this, but I've had so many challenges in finding, because there's marketing companies out there that nowadays focus on business podcasts, SaaS podcasts, and so on. and they give you packages where they kind of like promise you, oh well, with our marketing bit you're going to increase your ROI to your business, like, I don't know, 2x in the next 6 months or 3x in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And when I reach out to them and say, hey, I'm having this podcast, are you able to help? A lot of them turn me down because they're like, oh yeah, but I mean, we're doing this in order to grow your business income and your inflow of customers. Like, I don't have any KPIs to give you. You're an indie podcast. So
Oh, really?
our podcasts are called indie podcasts nowadays
Okay.
because it's not tied to a business, right? It's not tied to I'm doing this. I'm sharing my expertise in order to sell my product or my service, which is perfectly fine. But that's the status quo nowadays, versus what we're doing, which is like, hey, this is great, sharing, putting more people, platforming more people, and so on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It is. It's strange. Isn't it? It's definitely that, and I do get asked that a lot about the monetary. And I guess, look, mine is in a way, mine's linked to the business. It's part of the business club in the sense that it's another medium that we've got to share stories. But and people come and become part of that membership organisation, and they have the ability to come on the podcast and share their story.
Yeah.
But it's not the. I think for me personally, it's on a personal level. It's being someone in the business community for nearly 15 years now. I'd like to think I've built a network and a reputation within that. The podcast has definitely elevated that to a degree. But I think genuinely because people see, similar to yourself, I guess people see that there's that passion. I absolutely love it. So it's not going to be a case of this is my passion and I've found something that just lights me up. And that's whether it's my purpose or not, but I love doing it. So I'm going to continue to do it as long as I'm creating a life for myself that allows me to do that. As long as, I guess, back to the money thing, if the business stuff that I'm doing pays my bills and keeps me at that level and that's growing and doing what I need it to do, great. It still enables me to get up every day and choose where I'm going to go, and that choice is an amazing thing to have. And I guess that's a level of success again that you go, I'll get up and I'll get the choice I'll make my own decisions and my own choices based on what I want to do with my life, and that's something quite special, I think.
It's also, I think it's a really good place. I would call it privileged place for us to be in, right? In a sense,
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people do things because of a very specific need. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because it comes across as doing something for a very specific need, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
15 years. 15 years in the business community.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big question, but what's the biggest takeaway? Something that I usually ask to just whatever comes first in your mind.
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is a couple. One, that relationship with failure. Don't be afraid to fail. I think is a big thing for me. Learning that quite early on, failing quite early on, enabled me to do that. But big thing is actually the key in everything that we do in life is just to be present as much as we can. Recognise actually how far we've come. Be grateful for that and look around and be grateful. Practice gratitude, be grateful for where you are right now. Because me 5 years ago would have loved to have been sitting here having this conversation. And recognising that and being grateful is such an important thing, I think, for any business owner, because we can constantly be chase.
Yeah.
I'm going to get there. Don't actually know necessarily where that's going to be. And the worst thing that we can do is delay our happiness until we get there, because we promise ourselves that when we get there, everything's going to be all right.
It also keeps you sane, isn't it? Like having living in the moment and being grateful for where you are and what you're doing helps keeps you sane. Even if like it's okay and great to chase stuff. I chase stuff,
Yeah,
you
of
chase
course.
stuff, but without that satisfaction and looking at what you have and being grateful for the things that you're experiencing now, you just go crazy. You just it's stress and unhappiness and so on. And we all know that all of that. Like if you're in deep stress and feeling these feelings of these negative feelings, that physically affects you as well, right? So like you're gonna get ill, things will happen if you exist in this constant state of unhappiness and stress, because the only thing that's gonna make you happy is this one thing that it's long away and you're chasing that, and you're like ignoring everything. I used to do that and I was so unhealthy, even physically, right? So yeah, it helps keep you sane and healthy, just learning how to cherish those moments that you're experiencing today.
I agree. I think look, we can live in, and as entrepreneurs, we become very good at living in survival mode. We survive.
Oh
We're
yeah,
fighting
yeah,
fires. We're putting out a fire there. We're putting out a fire. We're surviving, and we become really, really good at that. That's not a healthy place to be.
yeah.
We don't want to constantly just be surviving, and getting to that point where you're appreciative of where you are and grateful for where you are at this moment, and looking around and being grateful for that is it does really help with that whole process, I think, and getting us out of that survival mode a little bit. And like you said, because without our health, we've got nothing. And it's important to look up. So whether it's running, swimming, whatever it is that we do, exercise and stuff like that, trying to have them moments is key. Is key.
I usually end with three flash questions, but I do have one other question that you can expand on the answer with, which is, I know kind of like failure is a word that people don't like, right? Some people, which each with its own, it's like calling it moments of learning in a sense. Yeah, still, you failed in that moment. What was that biggest moment in your career, this 15 years so far, that you felt that was the biggest fuck up that I've done?
Um, how long have you got?
Just one
Sure.
that
I think.
comes.
Look, I guess for me, probably the salon was the biggest failure. Right? Like I say, I had to close that business. I haven't closed one since, so I had to close that business and stop it. So that would probably be the biggest failure that I've had. Like I said, financially as well, affected me. Like I said, I had to sell a property that I had in Essex to pay off some of that money. So that was it was a tough time emotionally, financially, all of them things that come on. And the fact it was my first business. My first business and it didn't work. Self-doubt, questions, all of those things that come in. But like I said, it was probably the making of me in the sense that it was my first step on that entrepreneurial journey. And I think maybe I've always said to my wife, I said, if I needed to put food on the table, I'd go out there. If I had to drive an Asda van, I'd go and do that. In 15 years, thankfully, I haven't had to go down that route. I've always worked for myself and had my own business, and I think maybe I'm unemployable now. I don't know many entrepreneurs. We say a lot of people said that of mine, and you go, maybe we're unemployable now. But I always believe that things will be all right. And because I've been to that place and I know what that failure looked like, and I'm not saying that the businesses I've got now, if they did fail tomorrow, I still think that I'd get up and you dust yourself off and you go, I'll come up with another idea and we'll go again, because that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is a really insightful and pleasant conversation to have, because I think we share so many similarities from the odd background of being in the same kind of
That's
industry
strange.
mid 2010s to the podcast and what we're trying to do with these platforms. I usually end with 3 flash questions. Number 1, what's a quote that you live by?
Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. Say yes to opportunities, right? Got to, and I do believe so many people come on and ask me about stuff, and you go, what advice would you give? I just go and do it. Just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? Also, what's the best that can happen? It's balanced out, but you're not going to know unless you do it, right? So,
I've learned that as well. It's you can give the craziest good advice until someone does it and goes through certain things on their own. It's not the same thing. It's never the same thing. So yeah, really good one. Book that impacted your life, either personal or professional path.
There's been a couple actually over the last few years. Think Like a Monk with Jay Shetty was an amazing book. So much of it around being present. I think that's really helped me a little bit. From an entrepreneurial side of things, Shoe Dog was amazing. Had a massive impact. I thought it was a fantastic book, talking about an entrepreneurial journey from the founder of Nike, Phil Knight. Just incredible. Yeah, those two are probably had a big impact. I don't read a huge amount. Audible's changed my life. I've listened to more books in the last 4 years than I probably have read in my entire life. So I think they're some good ones.
I've heard quite a lot about Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I'll probably will wind up listening to that as well, because I'm not an avid reader. I listen to stuff and watch stuff a lot more. Good habit that you advocate for.
Exercise is a good thing. In getting out in nature and exercise. I sea swim a lot. For me, I get up early, 5 o'clock most mornings. I try and get down and swim in the sea or pool, depending on weather allows. I think just is a great start to the day. Sets me up for the day. If I haven't got in the sea, I'll have a cold shower, just something along that. Just that really helps me from a habit point of view. If I haven't done some form of exercise that beginning of that morning, I don't feel as great for the day. It's a good start to the day, I think, for me.
I was gonna say, because cold shower or getting into a cold sea, it's kind of like boosting endorphins and adrenaline, so it like helps starts the day. But my question to you is, because I've heard you talk about this quite a lot, doing it so often, like getting into the sea so often, is it still cold for you, or do you go in and it's the right temperature?
Honestly, it's still look, you definitely acclimatise to it and you get used to it. Like this is the first year I've gone through the winter without a wetsuit and gone in as much as I can, and you do get used to it, but it's still free. Like even for a cold shower, like I'll stand in there, hot shower, the last 2 minutes. I set me a timer, last 2 minutes, and I still have to build myself up to get back in there. Right? You turn it on the cold, you go, okay, let's do it. But you breathe in and you get in, and it releases something and them endorphins. But there's something about the way, especially the way the sea is this morning, just it's like a mill pond, and you go in, and it's still freezing, probably 11, 12 degrees at the moment. So it's still pretty cold. But you go in and you're within nature. I mean, you go, wow. That's so yeah, I'd recommend something like that to start your day off. Just get your mindset in place and ready. Feel like I'm ready to go. Once I've done it, I'm ready to go. Right.
Perfect. Completely agree. I go train. That's my endorphin boosting in the morning. And when I don't, and I'll wake up lazy, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Awesome. Thank you so much for accepting to do this. I'm expecting an invite to your podcast. Joking. I'm not gonna pressure you here.
100%. No, it's been. Listen, I've loved having a conversation. Love obviously what you're doing. Love your setup as well. Very jealous of this, but yeah, look, it'd be an honour to have you on. So we'll line that up, I'm sure.